Okay, so if you've just gotten into the room, check out this poll that we have up right now. When was the last time you videotaped yourself in rehearsal? And I'll probably cut that poll off here in about 30 seconds. So if you want to join in, feel free to, and then we'll get started right at 12:45, which is basically right now. Okay, so it looks like we ended up with about 56% of you saying last year, 31% of you saying last semester, and 11% of you said you videotaped yourself in your last rehearsal. So good for you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and end that poll and let's get started. So first of all, welcome to all of you to the clinic 10 Common Rehearsal Mistakes. Avoid these potholes along the road to successful teaching. And I got to tell you what, guys, I'm still got and mud from the potholes I've stepped in during my teaching career. And I've been retired now since 2013, and I'm still trying to get the dirt off. It's tough. There are so many things, that so many traps along the way that we can fall into, and things start getting kind of sort of comfortable. And we're like, yeah, this is working for me. And sometimes we don't realize what we're missing, and we don't realize what our students are missing because we're not always on top of our game. Okay. So I know that 10 common rehearsal mistakes sounds a little negative as a topic, but remember, my goal today is to help you become the best possible teacher you can be. I was very fortunate in my career because I had so many great mentors. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the great mentors I had. I was so privileged and so lucky to have those people. All right. But I'm sure you have people in your life as well from the past, and you're going to meet some great people in the future that are going to be great mentors for you. And hopefully we're all going to help you along this path. All right. So let's get going because I know I always run out of time. Number one, and I'll try to keep an eye on the chat here. I'm not always real good at that, but I'll try my best. Number one, inconsistency in the way your students enter the band hall. One of my favorite things that I do, and a lot of times it's through support from Conn-Selmer, so I'm always grateful, is I get to travel all over the country, guys, and I get to go into a lot of band rooms. Folks will ask me to come and spend 2 or 3 days and watch their middle schools, and then go to high school, watch their high schools, and then we'll have a meeting with the middle school and high school teachers, and we'll talk about the things that are working, maybe suggest to make some changes to some things that aren't working. But I'll tell you what, every time I walk into a school, you can just sense what things are going to be like. And the minute that I get into the band hall and the bell rings and the kids start coming into the room, I can almost tell you immediately what that rehearsal is going to be like. If they come in and they're doing nothing but socializing, and don't get me wrong, I'm socializing, especially with students, it's all good. But if all they're doing is socializing and wasting time when they could be getting their instruments, getting in their seats and getting warmed up, I know that it's probably not going to be the most focused rehearsal I've ever seen. All right. So when you are planning, especially for those of you that are new teachers, stick to a routine. When I was young, I thought that was corny. I'm just going to be honest with you. I thought it was so corny to have this everyday routine. I thought the kids were going to be bored to tears, etc. All right. But what I realized over the years is that my kids were suffering because they didn't respect the band hall. So they didn't come into the room ready to learn. And that's what you have to get your kids ready to do. They have to be willing to come into your room, your classroom, ready to learn. Okay, with open minds, ready to dig in. Right. And if there's too much time talking, etc., if they're not going to get their instruments, if they're not warming up at their seats, okay, probably not the best way to come in. Now, some of you may have different ways of doing it, and that's fine, because the only thing I'm after in this is when kids start rehearsing and you get on that podium, that they put their instruments down from warming up. They're looking right into your eyes. You're looking right into their eyes, and we're all on the same page and we're ready to go. All right. So this is really, really important. And that's why I put it as number one, because the other things we're going to talk about really kind of fall apart anyway if your kids don't enter the room the same way. So here's what I'm going to suggest. All right. See, I told you I'd run out of time. I'm talking too long on number one already. This is what I'm going to suggest. When your kids come into the room, the goal should be for them to immediately, if they have books, whatever, go put them under their seat, or if you have a locker, or if you have storage lockers, you know, those wood lockers or wherever in your band room, they can put them there. If they put them on the floor, whatever you have them do, they go right to the instrument storage room. They get their instruments. They come back out. They sit down. They immediately take their instrument out, check it to make sure everything's working, get lead soaked, everything has to be doing. Okay, percussionists should be making sure that everything is set up in the back of the tune based on what you have written on the board. All right, so think about that. And then once they get their put together, they should start on their own. Now, I'm going to ask you guys maybe to think about switching some terminology. A lot of us think of warm up as the first 15 or 20 minutes of rehearsal. I'd like you to think of warm up from this point on as being what the kids do on their own when they come into the rehearsal hall. And then when you start rehearsing them or doing your fundamentals or your basics, that's called ensemble development. That's not warm up. Okay, so think about that. Kids come in, get their stuff, they're ready to go, they're in their seats, all right, and they're ready to warm up on their own. And as soon as that instrument's together, they should not be afraid to start playing and get going. All right. So think about that. And remember, when you start rehearsal, that's ensemble development time. Might be a little bit of warm up in there, but it's mainly ensemble development time. All right. Now, this next one, I got to warn you ahead of time, I'm going to spend a little time on because it's something I really believe in. And I'm seeing some teachers that are joining us on this. I see Susan from Nashville. There are all these teachers on here that I respect so much as master teachers. And if you watch these master teachers teach, one of the things you'll notice is they don't miss the obvious. Okay, they have a plan and they stick to it, and they don't go on until they feel like their students are solid enough on the concept they were working on. Let me give you an example. If you're working with beginners, and we all know you got to pace rehearsals, guys, I get all that. But if you're working with beginners or with middle school kids, well, heck, even with high school kids, and you're working on sound, on quality of sound, right? And you go on to tuning or you go on to articulation or something else before you're really happy with the sound, you at least have to talk to your students about what you're not pleased with. You can talk to them about the things that you think they're doing well and say, you know, guys, when we come back to this next time, we're still going to have to dig on this because we're not there yet. All right. So the whole idea, the whole point I'm trying to make here, especially for you young teachers, is if you skip steps early on in kids' development, in your ensemble's development, you're going to pay for it later. Think about when you go to festival. All of you that go to festival right now, what is a festival score sheet? What's it say on the score sheet? It doesn't say anything like, oh, here's how we think you played the music that you just played, right? No, it says, here's how we think you did in terms of tone quality. Here's how we think you did in terms of articulation, phrasing, intonation, etc. Guess what all those are, guys? They're basics. They're fundamentals. So when we listen to ensembles, when you listen to your own ensembles, we're always listening, okay, for fundamentals. Now, Rich says, this is a challenge with 90, 11-year-old kids simultaneously. Man, Rich, I don't envy you. I'll tell you that right now. That is tough to do. But I'm telling you what, we have to put our smiley face on. We have to put a little bit of our acting gear on. And we have to make sure that these kids understand how important these basics are. And if you didn't get a chance to watch Erin Cole's clinic, and I think she did it yesterday, it's called Hiding the Vegetables. She talks about a perfect way to do this, guys. So go back and watch it if you didn't get to see Erin's video, because it's a perfect way of doing this. Now, I'm going to share my screen with you for just a second here to talk about this. I promise I won't take too long. Now, real quickly, I'm going to run you through some of these things about skipping steps, and I'm hoping that you can all see my screen clearly here. Okay, So warm up versus ensemble development. We just talked about that. Warm up, what students do when they enter the room. Ensemble development begins with the first sound made with the entire group. Percussion section during warm up and ensemble development must have a routine using practice pads or soft mallets on keyboards. The reason I say that is that there are times, whether we like it or not, guys, there are times where we just have to hear the winds. All right, so I'm all about percussion playing with winds on those exercises, but there have to be times where we just hear the winds. Now, non-negotiable basics, teaching sound, tone versus noise. Have one of your kids stand up, have them volunteer, have them play a long tone, and then ask them, what percentage of your sound do you think was noise? What percentage of your sound do you think was tone? I guarantee you the second time they play, they'll play with better sound. When you're teaching tempo, use the help of an amplified metronome or silent counting exercises you use for your percussion section as metronomes. Now, here's another couple of things that you can do to help skip steps, to help not skip steps. Teaching listening and awareness skills. I know I'm going quick. Hang with me here. Blend. Pick 2 clarinets, okay, and ask them to play a long tone together. Ask the rest of the class to raise their hands when those 2 students sound like one player. You've just taught your students what blend means. Tuning. See blend above. Think about it. If you've got 2 students blending perfectly, they're probably going to be really well in tune. You can use drones to help. I encourage you to use drones, the tonal energy tuner, etc. Okay, use just tuning. And by the way, this thing that you're watching right now on my screen, guys, is one of the files that you can download. All right, so that's why I'm going through it so quickly. I have some balance percentages here that I'd like you to think about. You can look at those later. Keep exercises simple. Allow students time to apply those non-negotiable basics. Help students develop your listening and awareness skills. Don't be so technical in nature with your exercises that kids can only think about notes and rhythms. All right, we already talked about the amplified met. We talked about a tuning drone sounding. And I talk in my clinics a lot about focused repetitions. I'm a big fan of repetitions, but I'm not a big fan of going through the motions. So you first-year teachers, you beginning teachers, make sure you start to see the difference in your own rehearsals. Is what I just did a focused repetition? Did we really accomplish something, or was I just going through the motions? Rehearsing skills. So I'm going to go through this very quickly, I promise. We can isolate skills. Instead of playing the entire piece or an entire section of the piece, let's take away the rhythm. Let's just work on note accuracy. Rhythm. Let's take away the pitches. Maybe we play the rhythms on B flat, E flat, or F concert. Articulation and stop consistency we can get by taking away the pitches. Have your brass do things on mouthpieces. Everyone else singing. Okay? Lots of singing when it comes to tuning. Lots of singing. Counting exercises. All right? Anything that you can do. One of my favorite counting exercises, try this with your kids. Have them count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then stay silent for 8 counts. And see if after 8 counts they can come back in and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and be together. Okay, so just really simple exercises, but you'll find out if they're taking care of these fundamentals. You can have great clarity if you follow a consistent plan to instill playing basics, if you choose your exercises wisely and use focus repetitions. And if you really rehearse using isolations of skills, if you insist on musicality, nuance, and appropriate phrasing. One of my favorite sayings that I learned from a director in Canada, actually, music either comes from somewhere or goes somewhere. Okay? So there's some things for you to think about in terms of skipping steps. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we're going to get back to our slides. And here we go. Now let me take a quick look at the chats here. Someone is asking about the downloads. It should be in the files section. If for some reason we have a problem, I'll make sure you get it. I'll see if I can't maybe post it in the chat too. Okay. Jennifer's talking about that Dalcroze exercise, which is awesome, where they clap on different beats. Perfect. That's exactly the thing that I'm talking about. Getting your kids to feel and hear these things. Okay. So I'm going to move on here. I promise we'll get to some questions here. Number 3, too much talking, not enough playing. I'm bad at this. I'm terrible at this. Okay. Because the minute I hear a problem, you know, I'm so old that I have all these different answers, and I want these kids to know this, 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 and this. All right. But you got to give them those succinct answer. Get right back to playing. Get right back to playing. All right. And sometimes this is another good reason to videotape yourself, by the way, is because you might find when you check the time line on your video, you may realize, you know what? I talked for over half the period and we only played for 20 minutes. All right. So think about that. Now, when you do talk, be succinct, but here's something else I'm going to suggest. Let the kids talk. When you finish an exercise or when you finish anything, playing a part of the music, whatever, all right, what I'd like for you to do is, instead of you saying, here's what you heard, I'd like for you to look at the kids and say, okay, what did you guys just hear? And you know how kids are. Some of them will immediately put their hands up and say, I heard this, this, this. Some of them will never do it. So down the road, you may have to be one of those teachers that calls on someone who never raises their hands. You got to put them at ease by saying, it's okay. There's no wrong answers. I just want to know what you heard. The more that you can get your kids to ask themselves what they just did, the more they'll start policing themselves, the more they'll start rehearsing themselves, and the quicker your rehearsals will move, and the more you'll get things done. It's another great way to keep your kids engaged. When I walk into a classroom and I watch a teacher that talks the entire time without ever letting the students talk, I usually find that about halfway through the period, that person starts losing kids. Let's see some of the questions in here. Jennifer says, should we handle singing in class differently upon return to the classroom with all the research concerned about singing due to COVID? Totally get it, Jennifer, and I totally get it. I think probably right now, I'm just going to guess, and I was administrator too, I'm just going to guess that your administrators, if you were going to sing, probably want you to stand as many feet apart as you can. So depending on the size of your classroom, you'll have to make that decision. Hopefully we'll get to a point soon where we don't have to do that. But man, the minute that we can start singing again, we've got to do it. Rich asks, do you advocate occasionally including a talk break in long rehearsals with younger kids, where the director shares an anecdote? Absolutely. Okay. And the only thing I would say, Rich, is when you're doing that, make sure that you have their eyes and you are looking right into their eyes. Okay, if you've ever watched the videos by Ben Zander, he talks about shining eyes. So teachers, especially you new teachers, look at your kids when you're talking. Are their eyes shining, looking back at you? Or are they looking down, looking over, not engaged? That's one of our roles, guys. As a teacher, we can't teach if we don't have them. Okay, we can't teach if we don't have them. So look for those shining eyes. Michael's saying, I will start with humming too. And Rich was saying, let's hum. Absolutely. Yeah. If they're humming and you're working on pitch control, you can hum chords, scales. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can hum the music. Absolutely. All right. So too much talking, not enough playing. Make sure your kids are playing. That's what they're there to do. That's what they love doing. Give them just succinct information. Ask them for information. Move right on. Number 4, I'll tell you what, before we do that, let's pull up another poll. Okay, this is a tough one. If you had to rate yourself on classroom management based on the amount of experience you've actually had in front of ensembles, How would you answer? I'm anxious to see what you guys put in the boxes here. Look at all those people in that middle box, right? And while you're doing this, I'll tell you, when I first started teaching, my class was engaged and in control, but I'll tell you why. I did it the wrong way. I did it with fear. I was so intense with those kids that, yeah, they were looking at me, and you could have heard a pin drop in the room, but I don't think they were enjoying it at all. It took me a long time to learn how to get my class engaged and in control without being threatening, without being mean, without holding fear over the top of their heads. Okay, so I did it the wrong way early. Okay, a couple more seconds here. All right, so we ended up with 66% saying the class mostly engaged and mostly in control, which is great. 26% of you put class engaged and in control. And then 6% put class not engaged and a bit out of control. It's okay. We've all been there. We've all been there. Man, I've had times where I walked out of some of my middle school rehearsals in tears because I realized I had no idea how to get my class engaged. All right, thank you for participating in that poll. That's great information. All right, so now we're going back to our slides here. So to fix that, what do we do? Or actually to fix just about anything in our rehearsal plan, what do? We look for a master teacher that we can go watch. Or we ask a master teacher to observe your teaching. Okay, now I'm gonna tell you a quick story here, and it's not the most professional thing, but I'm going to tell you. Next to Carmel High School was a place called Woody's, and the teachers hung out there a lot because they had this downstairs area, right, where people couldn't look in. So we'd hang out there. So there would be times I'd walk into Woody's and I'd sit to this table where I normally sat, and Woody, who is the actual owner, would come up to me and say, "Boy, Richard, you look down again." And then he looked at me, he starts shaking his head. He goes, "Did you have someone in to listen to your band today?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." And so I'm not saying going to a bar is the answer, but you may have to go to therapy after you have someone in watching you teach. Okay, it's tough, guys. It's really tough. I've been in situations where I've had master teachers leave me these long yellow notepads. You know what I'm talking about? This thick, full of notes after watching me for 2 days. So they're basically saying, "Salcedo, you're not very good." And I'd read through those pages and I'd be like, "You got to be kidding me." And then after I got over it, went to my therapy, whatever, I'd come back and I'd look at that list again and I'd go, "They're right. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this." So I got a decision to make. I can whine about it. I can complain about it. I can get all depressed, or I can get to work. And that's what these people encouraged me to do, because they were encouraging, even though they were brutally honest. They were encouraging. Now, here's what I'm going to ask y'all to do, especially you teachers who are young teachers just getting started. At least 2 times a year, you have to have a master teacher. And you're saying, "Well, how do we pay for them?" You're not going to like this answer. If your school can't do it, you got to do it out of your pocket. I'm sorry. Do it the best you can. Offer to take them to a great meal afterwards. Do whatever you can do. But I'll tell you what, most teachers will be willing to do it for a nice meal afterwards, or sometimes even for gas money. But 2 times a year, you got to have those people in your classroom watching you. And then I'm going to say at least 1 time a year, you've got to go watch master teachers teach. If I was doing this again, if I was at Carmel High School right now, well, first of all, I'd be watching my former student teach, Mike Pote, because he's amazing. But I'd probably go up and watch Greg Bim teach at Marian Catholic. Okay. There's all these great people. There's Andy Seeley down at Hebron High School in Texas. Man, I would pay for a flight to go down and watch Andy because he's amazing. And sometimes, guys, it's not easy to get to these teachers. Sometimes it's not easy for them to get to you, but we have to figure this out. We've got to get great teachers watching us. We have to swallow our pride. We have to leave our ego at the door, and we have to say, help me get better. And you know what's even cooler? If your kids say, why is this person in the back of the room? And you say, he's watching me or she's watching me, they're going to say, why? And you're going to say back to them, you're going to tell them the truth, because I want to get better. I'm asking you guys to get better every day. This teacher with lots more experience, he is going to help me get better. Your kids will respect you more than you can even imagine if you'll do those things. Okay. Greg is saying Andy is awesome. You better believe it. I heard Andy's band at the San Antonio Regional down in Texas when I was one of the assistant chief judges for Band of America. I think this was 2 years ago. I heard his band play. I immediately went from the press box down to field level to find Andy. And I just simply looked at him and I said, how do you do that? And he said, what are you talking about, Richard? I said, Andy, that band just sounded like the New York Philharmonic wind section. He goes, and he kind of looked down because Andy's a very, non-assuming guy, has no ego. He just looked at it. He goes, we just work on a concert, man. We work on listening skills. I just gave him a huge hug and I said, man, you are changing our activity the way you're getting your kids to play. Andy Seeley, Hebron High School, have him come to your band room. I bet he won't even charge you that much. Okay, but man, will it be worth it. Okay, I'm getting excited. Sorry. All right. Number 5, listening and not hearing. I'm going to tell you a quick story from yesterday. I was doing a clinic with the collegiate kids. And part of it was on developing your ears. We were talking about developing your ears, your mind, and your heart to be an educator. So the first thing we did is talk about ears. And I actually gave them a little ear training test. They had to listen to 2 scales that I played. They had to listen to a triad, and they had to listen to a chord. And then they had to analyze them and tell me what they were. So the first scale I played was a C melodic minor scale. The second scale I played was a C minor or a C Dorian mode. The triad I played was an augmented triad. And the chord that I played was a dominant 7th with a flat 9. Now, some of those kids nailed it, guys. Some of them were not even close. And they were like, oh my gosh. And I was trying to tell them, look, I'm not saying you have to hear every dominant 7th with a flat 9, but you've got to get your ears going. So when you're standing in front of your ensemble, you can be the best error detection person you can be. You can tell if they're balanced. You can tell if they're in tune. You can tell if the trumpets are blended. Nothing against trumpets, okay? But let's be honest. We've all heard those groups where the trumpets stick out or one trumpet sticks out, right? And that's what I mean by listening and not hearing. That's why I think another thing that's great to do is record your rehearsals, not videotape them. Record them. Okay, record them. A couple of great collegiate friends of mine who are directors at some major colleges, they record every recording of every rehearsal they do. And they go home at night, and before they go to bed, they analyze those recordings and they make notes about things they missed, things they have to do the next day, all right, etc. Okay. Yeah, Robert's saying talk to your local universities. They know where the great teachers are. Absolutely. And you Canadian folks that are talking about the teachers in Canada, because there are some folks I know about, but then there's some that I don't. Certainly, you guys know John Phillips in Canada. Man, I'd have John Phillips in my classroom any day. I mean, he is absolutely amazing. Okay, but getting back to this listing thing, guys, continue to test yourself on listening. And here's how you do that. When you're analyzing your scores, figure out some of the chords in there and work with your band on tuning them. Use just tuning, by the way, not equal tuning. Used just tuning. So if you're tuning them on a triad, the root's on 0, the third is 14 cents flat, the fifth is a couple cents sharp. Okay? Use just tuning. Get those chords so in tune. That will improve your listening like you won't even believe. Okay? I got to keep moving here. The chat information is great that you guys are putting on here. I wish I had more time to talk about everything you're putting on here. Okay, now guys, here's one of my pet peeves. Okay, I'm going to get really excited now because this is something I see in rehearsals everywhere I go. All right, it doesn't matter if it's middle school, beginning, high school, the most top level wind ensembles. How many of you have been in the middle of a great rehearsal and you turn and look at the clock? What happens? You change what you're doing. Now, if you don't, good for you. But you have your lesson plan. I don't know how you guys do yours, but I used to have them on little Post-it notes. I'd have all these different color Post-it notes. My kids make fun of me all the time. I had Post-it notes all over my stands. Okay. My associate directors make fun of me like you wouldn't believe. I'd be lucky if I got to 3 of those Post-it notes because I never looked at the clock. But I used my ears and I said, you know what? We're not ready to move on yet. And sometimes my kids would give me that look. You know what I'm talking about? That look like, seriously? Are we going to play this F concert again for the 10th time? Or really? Are you going to make us go tune that chord again for another 15 minutes? You know the look I'm talking about. All right. But sometimes in our goal to keep kids engaged and to keep our pacing correct, we skip steps, just like I talked about earlier. So it's really easy. Have you ever felt like the first few weeks of school are some of your best teaching? Why? We don't have a calendar coming up at us. We don't have the clock to look at because we're in no hurry. But the minute that first football game comes up, or that first competition comes up, or that first concert comes up, what suffer? Know what the answer is. We don't do as much fundamentals. Okay. And then we end up doing a concert and we go, well, that wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be. Well, why? Was it really because of the music? Or was it because our kids don't understand how to listen, you know, for things like chords and tuning and balance and blend? All right. So don't look at the clock. Do what your ears tell you need to do in rehearsal. Work your tail off to try to keep the pacing going. But you know when your kids will understand is when they sound amazing. When your kids sound amazing, they will look at you like, and they'll be just as surprised. But when the bell rings, they'll be like, whoa, rehearsal's really over? No. If they're getting as much done because you're using your ears, I'm telling you guys, I guarantee you this will work. I guarantee you. Okay, 7. Not teaching your students to read music. Oh, I got to get another poll in here. I knew I was going to run out of time. Okay. Yep, we got to get to this one. Okay, so here's the poll. It's out there now. How will you teach your students to eventually read music on their own? Go for it. Daily sight reading, rhythm of the day, scales, all of the above. Yes, 100%, all of the above. Okay. And I know that you'll use a combination of all of those. All right, guys, I swear by rhythm of the day. And all above, I think, is probably the best answer for all of us. Okay. Any answer is correct up there. All the answers are good. Okay. But if you put all above, that's great. But I'm telling you, I swear by rhythm of the day. But if you put a rhythm up there, your kids have to understand the front, back, side, in, out of that rhythm. They got to understand every subdivision that fits with it. What I have them do, let me give you a simple one. eighth to 16th, which we all know is one and a, right? But I'll have a student come up and write one E and a underneath it, right? And then another student will come up, and of that one E and a, he or she will circle the subdivisions where we actually articulate. So the final answer for these kids is to count one E and a while they're going one E and a. All right. And then I'll put it in a different meter. Okay. If it was in 4/4, I'll put it in 3/4 on beat 2. So in other words, I show them every possible permutation, okay, for that rhythm. Okay. Thank you for participating in that poll. I appreciate you guys doing all these polls. Now, we've all asked our kids to go home and practice, right? How can they practice if they don't read music? About that for a second. How can they practice if they can't read music? Don't you guys remember back when you were studying? Remember when you were so excited in high school or college because you could go out to the music store or you'd order it online and you'd get this new book of music that you loved. Maybe you loved musicals. So you bought the music for the musical Wicked. And you sat in your room one night and played through all those pieces. And you were so fired up because you loved that music and you could play it. Why were you so fired up? Because you could read the music. Your kids are going to be just as excited if they can read. All right. So it's so important to get your kids to read. Okay. I'm going to have to fly here. Number 8, teaching parts in rehearsal instead of empowering your students to learn them on their own. Anybody guilty of that? I am. Have been forever. I'm getting better. By the time I'm 85, maybe I'll have it figured out. This is part of the culture of excellence, guys. And Tim Lotzenheiser and I are going to do a clinic later on today, which is called Creating a Culture or a Program of Excellence. This is part of the culture. You want the culture to be similar. I'm not trying to tell you how to do your culture, but I'm saying here would be a good example. Your culture might say that, your kids know in their minds, the minute they get a new piece of music, they know they have 2 weeks maximum to have it learned. Okay. And that could be even a tough concert band piece. All right. Now you may say, well, my kids only need 1 week. That's great. All right. But we've got to get to that point, guys. So we're not wasting our rehearsal teaching parts. Okay. So important. You can set your students out to do some sessionals. They can do that too. But let's do our best to avoid teaching parts in rehearsal. Number 9, not creating enough goosebump moments in rehearsal. So I remember a rehearsal at Carmel years ago, and this was just in our band room. We're getting ready for a concert, and we were doing the piece O Magnum Mysterium. And you're probably really familiar with that piece. And at the end, it has this beautiful triad. And one of the things that I do with our kids whenever I do that piece is after we cut off the last chord, I have them continue to hum the triad. And, we work so hard on tuning and balance and blend. And whatever it was that day, guys, they were amazing. They cut off that note and I almost had tears in my eyes. They hummed the note. We cut it off. And I didn't even move my hands because I didn't want to break the vibe in the room. I finally put my hand down and I looked at my front row, and half of my front row had tears coming down their face. And I looked at them and I said, doesn't get any better than this, does it? And they're like, no. And just at that moment, the bell rang. And I said, man, I can't wait to get back to this tomorrow, guys. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. No one moved a muscle. They wouldn't get out of their chairs. I finally had to get, after 2 or 3 times going, I am not writing you passes to go to your next class. Okay, but guys, that's a goosebump moment that you want to get with your kids. Now, it happens when they sound good and you mix that with a beautiful piece of music. If they understand tone, if they understand the details of tuning, blend, balance, and they play a beautiful chorale like O Magnum, man, it's just unbelievable, right? So we want to give them those goosebump moments. And in closing up here, you guys have been so great. Listen to all this. Not spending enough time helping your students to fall in love with music. I'll end with another quick story. My band had just played at Midwest. This was back in 2005, and I felt like we were on top of the world. I came back and I watched a video by Benjamin Zander, which I highly encourage you to watch. And if you watch any video by Ben Sander, it's amazing. But I watched this and I realized that maybe I wasn't checking to see what kind of music my kids really were in love with. So one day they were coming into the room. I got on the piano and I played this Chopin etude by Chopin. And the kids didn't know what to do as they were coming in. This was my top band, Wind Symphony 1. They came in and they kind of just stopped. And they're like, okay, this has to be some kind of trick. What are we supposed to do? But I was playing and they finally just stopped where they were. They sat down. Some of them were still by the door. They sat down. I got done. They applauded. And I said, "Do you guys enjoy that?" And a couple of the kids said, "Man, that was beautiful." "What was that?" I said, "It was a Chopin etude, piano etude." A few kids in the back of my room put their hands up and said, "Mr. Salcedo, who's Chopin?" And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." And I realized that I had done a lot of band teaching, not sure I had done a lot of music teaching. Guys, one of our number one goals is to help our kids fall in love with music. It might not be the kind of music that we love, but from that day on, when my kids came into the room, I had different types of music on. And every day, someone would come up to me saying, "I like that." Or someone would come up to me saying, "Salcedo, I hated that." I'm like, "It's fine. It's fine." But we got to meet them where they are. So it's great that they love band, choir, or orchestra. But man, what if they really love music? They're never going to quit. Our ensembles, they're never going to stop. They're going to be audience members. They're going to be supporting music in the future. Just so, so important. Okay? So something to think about there. Okay, now, before we finish up here, and I'm going to look at the chat, see if I'm sure I missed some of your questions, and I apologize. But here's the nice thing. I'm going to be on for an extra half hour, starting at 1:30 Eastern, and I will be happy to answer questions about this or anything you have questions about. I only have 30 minutes, but it's just a 30-minute question and answer session with me, and I will take whatever questions you have. I hope some of you will stick around for that 30 minutes. Okay, I'm looking through this really quickly here. Oh, Beth, I would like to see a clinic on how to motivate young students to practice in a video game world. All I can use is my own son as my example. He is on those games 24/7, but he's also a percussionist. So what I've started doing is showing him the technology of music. He's playing along with recordings, okay? He's learning some of the theory stuff that's online. But you know what fires him up more than anything? Watching great drum set players and watching the great drum corps percussion lines. Okay, so that's how I keep him involved. Okay, Andrew's saying difference of music teacher versus band director. Exactly. That's exactly right, Andrew, exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, but let's see. Thoughts on teaching parts for lower ability-based ensembles. I think for those groups where you feel like they have a little bit less ability at that kind of stuff, you might need to spend a little bit more time helping them. But what I mean by helping them on parts is not by feeding them the parts, but helping them figure out the parts. Like, here's what I would do. And I know you're going to say that takes too much time. I do it anyway. I'd find a student who's having problems reading a piece of music. and I'd say, give me 4 bars that you're having a tough time reading. I'd have that student, okay, bring that music up to me. I'd put it up on the board or up on the screen, and we'd work it out as a class how we would figure out how it goes. I wouldn't just tell them how it goes. We'd start the counting thing. We'd write subdivisions underneath, you know, however you can do it. But as long as I have no problem taking more time with those younger kids. It's really important that we do that, okay? But just make sure that you're just not handing it to them. Let's see, one more here. John, I teach a small rural school in Strawn, Indiana. Struggle with lots of students not practicing. How can I work with the students to improve practicing? Here's one of the things that I would do, and there's a lot of things that I suggest, and I'm not going to have the time, but one of the things that I would do, if you can get one of the major players, and even might be mad at me when I say this, but you could probably ask Michael Martin, who's principal trumpet in the Boston Symphony Orchestra. He will do video presentations for kids. And if you ask him to come on, or you ask a great jazz player to come on and play something amazing for the kids, and then say, show us how you practice. And what Michael Martin will do is he'll play a 10-minute long tone for them. And the kids will be going, what are you doing? He's like, I'm trying to get the long tune perfect. And the kids will be saying, sounds perfect to us. And he's like, not to me. He goes, that's what happens when you practice details like that. You start to get better at listening. So I would suggest that. Okay, that's one thing. A lot of things we could do, but that's one thing. Okay, so we're going to have to sign off here. But any of you that would like to stay on, and if you don't have the time, I totally get it. But you guys know what I'm into right now more than anything is giving back to what this great profession gave to me. And especially you young teachers, if you have questions or anything that I can help with, we'll have about 28, 29 minutes from this point on. I'd be happy to help. So thank you all so much for your dedication. And to all you new teachers, I wish you the very best. And let us know if we can help at Conn-Selmer. We're here for you, I promise. Okay, if you ask for help, we'll figure it out. Okay, you guys are the best. Thank you all so much.